Hello, everyone. My name is Oleg Blokhin, and I'm head of financial services at Provectus. We part of the Finas, joined Finas, and actually helping with two AI initiatives as part of the AI readiness, which is the governance framework for AI for financial institutions. That actually the first version was published today. In terms of the controls around LLM. And we also were members of Open LLM initiative that we just presented some of our work about an hour ago regarding using CDM, which is the common domain model, as with enhancement from AI, LLM, GenAI capabilities, right? And the feedback from a prior session was quite positive in terms of what we were able to achieve using GenAI capabilities on top of the common domain model that is quite complex interpretation of over-the-counter rules in terms of how to code different transactions across different financial institutions. So one of the things what we've been working at those two initiatives was how do you create credibility for the end user inside the financial organizations to use LLM, right? To use the GenAI capabilities to bring efficiency across the organization, right? And one of the things that we think is quite important that probably already exists at your organization is data governance, right? And how we can use existing processes or enhance the existing data governance practice that you currently have and use it with LLM. And one of the ways to do that is actually using RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, with data governance to enable organizations to feel at ease when they start using that across the organization, right? So in terms of the agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about corporate environments, limitations of foundational LLM, just out-of-the-box solutions, how we can look at the data governance that I mentioned already exist probably at your organization and enable the RAG to be as the core for using LLM. And then also in terms of the practical implementation of the data governance with some of the open source solutions that exist and together with retrieval augmented generation. So in terms of the large language models, I think there are a couple of the things why when the chat GPT was released almost 2 years now. It's every time you make those presentations, you add another year to it. But we were all quite shocked with the capabilities of the model, right, and what it was able to produce out of the box. There are a couple of the distinct features that we're able to see with the large language model, right? It's able to follow the instruction and generate the output. But one of the things with that output, there is a little bit of hallucination that may exist, right? And how you're able to reduce that. I don't think we're able to do it completely, but if we can make it minimum, that would be something that we would like to achieve. And then also how we can use the existing data bases that already exist with a lot of information, meta information, and enable LLM capabilities to add additional value to the enterprises. So in terms of the limitations of LLM in the corporate environments, some of the things that what information already exists, and we'll share the presentation, so I think they will have access to that. What type of information, right? In order for you to start using retrieval augmented generation, right, you need to understand what data exists, what knowledge is there, where it is, how you get access to that, who can have access to that, how you determine if the data is accurate, right? Is it 18 months old or it's been refreshed recently, right? Because if you're trying to use that information to make some business decision, you need to understand what is the quality of the data. And then also who owns the data and how they manage that, and also what is the cost of that. So in terms of what is the retrieval augmented generation, right? So RAG is a process of optimizing the output of a large language model. So it's not based only on public worldwide information that is available there, but using your knowledge, your data that exists inside your organization, right? So the answers that you get are specific to your enterprise, your data that you're working with. So with RAG, we're able to extend the current capabilities of LLM to a specific domain without actually training the model on your data, right? Because that's always a problem, right? It's kind of cost prohibited for some organizations. And also, when you train model on your own data, the ownership of the data is always questionable, right? And the other thing that is also important when you do that is there have been some benchmark studies that were produced where the general purpose LLM actually was producing better results than if LLM is only trained on your particular model, right? So how you approach that, you're able to use the RAG, retrieval augmented generation, with your corporate data using the generic LLM. And you can stop, ask questions. I would like this to be more interactive as I go through this. So here's just a small diagram in terms of how the user journey, or not the user journey, the data journey in terms of when somebody, the end user, is asking the question, how you go to the retrieval model. The retrieval model connects to your corporate databases, knowledge bases. Then you get retrieval back, the information. You send it to the generation model, which is LLM, to generate the answer for you. So there are...
So first you go to your own data model, then go to LLM, or first you get the output from LLM, then you cross-check with your data set?
No, so the way you actually go to the retrieval, and then you go for the LLM. So there are two parts to RAG. There is a retrieval piece, and there is a generation piece. So for the retrieval piece, usually what you do, and we'll have a little bit more details, is that you encode your data, you create embeddings, and the embeddings may be done with vector, or LLM can be used for that as well. I think today there are not that many, not every LLM that is available can create embeddings for you. And then when you have the embeddings and you connect to the databases, that's where the semantic search happens, where you're able to understand if the data that you're looking to retrieve from there does exist, you get it back, and then the generation piece, G in RAG, is that's where the LLM comes in place to generate the answer the way you would like to be able.
We have to send that our data also into LLM inside cloud. So if I have used our own data set, this need to share in the LLM space, or we can have our own intranet and you can use the LLM, which is kind of cloud?
It depends in your setup. You can deploy it privately, or you can do that with outside, if that's what you're asking. Yeah. OK, so that's the journey of the data through the process, right, in terms of the RAG. So there is also another use case, what we have seen in the industry, where there is no generation that needs to be done, right? So for example, when you building where you only need to search for the information and able to understand if the data exists, but you don't need to generate the answer, you just asking particular vector database to understand, okay, does this data exist? And if it exists, just return it back. That's it, right? You don't need to generate any additional information on top of that, right? So you're just using the retrieval mechanism and the embeddings that is done with the vector or LLM to be able to get the right data back without generating any additional information. So in terms of the data governance, you may have all 8, you may have some of this, right? But in terms of the data governance, and I'm not going to go into details, we don't have time for that. Data discovery, data lineage, quality of the data, data glossary, data security, data modeling, cost and master data. Those are the 8 pieces of the data governance, right? That seasoned, well-established organization will have, right? And then I would like to map each one of those to the ROC and see how we can apply what already may exist at your organization to fulfill the governance piece in terms of the using this. So in terms of manageable and transparent way to enrich ROC with open source metadata, right? So in order for you to be able to use the data, I think the first step, what we are trying to do is to enrich the information with the meta information, database or corporate knowledge base with meta information. So we should be, and all of this done in order to automate the processes, right? So better meta information that exists already will help you to understand where the data, who owns the data, how to use the data, right? So that's the goal around that. Because using this, and this is just from a real example that we work with the clients, is that when users are doing some, let's say, loan life cycle, you go through the underwriting process, right? You go through different steps in the underwriting process. If you would like to enable the user with some type of information that may help him during that process and provide what we call nudges or notifications, some signals as he looks at the origination. Let's say it's a real estate loan, and the property that he is underwriting located in a flood zone, right? So you go through the process of underwriting for the real estate asset class, and you know the zip code for the property. You would like to know that when somebody is doing that, if there is a notification, what is the flood risk related to that, for example, right? Do you need to charge premium? Do you need to have a flood insurance when you underwrite, right? So you should be able to actually send those signals if you know that that information exists in your database. But in order for you to know that, you need to be able to understand what data is there and how to use it. So that's where the meta information and metadata comes in place. So that's something that just mentioned about the data discovery, right? To be able to understand those things and how to use it in terms of the routing and the ownership, right? Because the data across big enterprises, different people owns that. How often do they update the data? How often the data gets refreshed, and if it's the latest data that needs to be used. In terms of the data glossary, similar way. There are other ways to enable that using some of the knowledge graph, knowledge maps, right? So you create different data schemas that can be consumed by the knowledge graphs on top of the retrieval augmented generation. So for example, if it's a fixed income, you're able to provide the meta information knowledge graph about different asset classes, right? Bonds, equity. So when you look at the database or your enterprise search, you're able to understand, is it coupon? Is it the cash flow structure, right? So you enabling and enriching data with those knowledge graph that can help you to get and understand the data that already exists. Then in terms of the data modeling, right? So there are a couple of things. This is more related to when you start working with the knowledge and enterprise level information that already exists. How do you, is the zero shot or few shots? So for example, on the previous session that we did with the common domain model, we actually did a few shot prompting where we enabled or instructed LLM when somebody asks you those questions. First of all, if the information that you're looking for, that user is asking, does not exist in the knowledge, don't give the answer. Don't try to come up with the answer if you're not able to find that, right? That's few-shot prompting, right? So we instructed LLM, if the information is not there, don't provide the answer. Then we're telling LLM, if this information does not exist in the knowledge map or knowledge base 1, looked at the knowledge base 2, right? So that's another way of prompting and helping LLM to figure out how to respond to the user questions. So those are the two different approaches that, yes?
So is there like a way we can force LLM to answer in a structured manner, or is that not?
If there is a way to force LLM to answer in a structured way, yes. So that's where the few-shot prompting comes in place.
Because I've been like testing it out with a few different examples, and it always gives like generic text, you know. It would always say, you know, here's the expected output, and then it would give the output.
Yes.
It always adds that line and stuff. So is there a way to ask it to?
Yes, there is a way to force LLM. If the answer does not exist that I'm answering, don't provide the answer. Yes, that's the way you can enforce the LLM not to hallucinate and not give you the answer. So for example, we deploy a lot of SharePoint search or whatever search functionalities, right? Different people can have different access. You may have a policy where you can go and subscribe for the financial magazines, let's say part of your organization. You go and you ask a question that I want to subscribe for, I don't know, Car and Driver magazine. It's going to go through the policy, understand, okay, Car and Driver is not financial magazine, and it's going to come and say, I don't know what is the policy to apply because I cannot find the answer to that question, right? So that's done with the few shots prompting.
So few shot protected.
Correct. Okay, so this is more in terms of the data quality and how to enrich different quality metrics, right? So for example, if you're using data for any of your business real-time type of decision-making activities, you would like to know that you're using the data that has been refreshed, right? So you're able to actually enable, as part of that few-shot prompting, where you will come, when you ask the question, the LLM is actually going to check when was the last time this data was updated, right? So that's part of that metadata information, where you say that if the data is, let's say, older than 12 months, I don't want to use, or I want to provide a notification to the end user that this data hasn't been updated, right? Because different people own the data, but the end user might not be the owner of the data, and they may not be able to refresh and use the latest data, right? So that's where the data quality comes in place. So there are a couple of tools in terms of the being able to open source, like Great Expectation, that is quite well known and used in the industry, as well as we at Provectus, we have our own open source initiative, Open Data Discovery, that helps you to understand the metadata information, the relationship between different objects in the data, and help you to identify where the missing pieces are, right? So the open source community is there to support different initiatives that can be applied on top of the ROC approach for the LLM. In terms of the data security, so that's probably one of the interesting one in terms of how you use role-based access and policy-based access control in terms of using ROC with those policies being enabled, right? So as part of this, and we will be able to see, I think in the next example here, it's probably really small, but in terms of the personal identifiable information, depending on the user access, some people in the organization may or may not don't have the rights to see personal information or information that is prohibited to them. So using this policy language, which is an open source CEDAR, you're able to understand and recognize different entities, and depending on the user control or policy control, you're able to enable and enforce those rules against different entities in your database, so users will not be able to see. The users that don't have to see any PI or any information will not be able to see that when they get the query back. So that's the idea here.
The data in this will still flow to the LLM, right?
The data,
PI or MLPI will still flow to the LLM for it.
it will not follow. It's what's going to follow to. So before it actually gets to the LLM, it's going to be removed from the query. Okay. I think in terms of the data cost and efficiency analysis, that's another area where I think RAG, as I mentioned as we started this conversation, is probably a more cost-effective approach than just fine-tuning your LLM based on the data that you have, right? So that would be an area where we see a lot of cost saving in terms of using the RAG to optimize the storage and different user strategies. In terms of the data lineage, right? So one of the things what is interested here is that when you get the information back to the user, you would like to make sure that there is a trace back, right? So any type of information, you're able to provide the linkage back to the original source. So the user, if there are any questions about the origin of the data and credibility of the data, you're able to have a data lineage back to the source. So you're able to understand if the data is correct or not. And that's all done with the retrieval augmented generation. So there are some LLM models today on the market that actually able to provide that linkages, or you should be able to build that yourself using retrieval augmented generation, right? Because you know where the data is located, and you're able to provide that relationship back to the end user. So this is about the master data, the last piece in terms of the data governance, right? And how it's used to enrich RAG system with lookup data, as well as different categories in hierarchy of essential business transactions that already exist in your existing databases, right? So that's another policy that helps you to provide the context regarding the use case that or the business problem that you're trying to solve. I think that's all we had for this session today. I don't know if any questions specific to using RAG, if you can share some of the information that you are doing already at your organization, or anything that we can answer, we would love to do that. Thank you.
One question.
Yes.
How much time it takes to train your model using RAG and LLM? Because it's not that you have LLM and you have RAG, right? To get the meaningful outcome, how much time and kind of
So we just, for the project that we did and showcased today, we spent about 3 weeks total to be able to onboard CDM, which is the common domain model that is part of the FINAS, and able to give the user ability to query the data, being able to create objects, being able to answer questions, everything using the source code, as well as the documentation, right? So there were 2 sources of data that was used to generate the answers back to the user. The time that where we spent the most of the time is to find the right LLM. So different LLM prosper in different areas, right? Being able to benchmark that against each other in terms of the output, as well as provide the configuration, meaning the temperature and different parameters to LLM, plus few short prompts. Right, so that took about 2 weeks to be able to enable somebody who never used CDM to go and create transaction.
And what are the underlying technology used in your program?
So we use, for that specific, we use AWS Bedrock. But you not limited to that. It just was for us easier with the time that we had to do, but there are open source tools that are available to pretty much reach the same goals. Oh, for the CDM, we use, I think it was one of the Anthropic models, either HiQ or Sonnet 3.5. No, I don't think the answer is specific to generic few shots, right? For each, or for the one that we used, I think there were 7. So there, yeah. So on AWS, there are only 2 possible choices for us: Titan or Cohere. So we didn't. We used Cohere because the output was better. But I think, yeah, that's usually what we do. We try what's available, depending on what technology you're using. And then when you do the semantic search, there is probably at least 5 different algorithms that you need to see which one gets you a better retrieval, right? Because the way it works is that you get the data, you remove the stop words from your prompts, right? And then you tokenize that piece, you provide the embeddings, and then you get different answers back, right? So you need to rearrange, you need to look at those information that you got back. It's not just one answer, there are a couple answers that you're getting back. And you either have to filter based on some of the mechanism or rearrange based on additional information before you get the final answer to you, right? So that semantic search, there are different methodologies that's available in order to do, and they all provide different output from that retrieval mechanism. Yes, it all depends on the couple things. First of all, if you have the ground truth data, you can compare and look at the accuracy, precision of the information that you get, right? Precision, recall. So it all depends on the use case that you're using, but those would be the one that, for example, can be used to understand the quality of that semantic search that you get back. You're asking what the ROI?
Yeah, ROI.
Return on the investment?
Yeah, like going to proper the production live use case, not just POC. POC we do a lot,
Yeah.
right?
So there are 2 things we've done. It's actually a great question. 2 things what prevents from POC going to production. Scalability and the governance. That's why we wanted to cover governance piece. In terms of the ROI, each organization will have different, right? There are different ways and different problems that are either solving or enhancing the existing processes. So when we work with the clients, we usually try to, each and every project is ROI based. Some of the clients actually don't look at ROI today because they just want to be able, they're not able to do this using other technologies, right? So in terms of their, so for example, in the insurance space, the underwriting, we're taking something that was taking days of manual work looking at the engineering reports, let's say, that you underwrite in different, like oil and gas, for example, to 5 minutes time. But not only that, when you have a submission, you're not able to look at all the reports because you just don't have time. You look only at the high-risk ones. But what happens with the remaining set of the reports?
That is good, but I think that this comes a lot.
A couple of things. First of all, there is always, when you first enable the capabilities, there should be always human in the loop that provides the feedback and the feedback loop to the model.
And that's going over that model, right?
Correct. Data lineage is another way of doing that, right? Before you start getting comfortable with that. And then it's also about your threshold. So you, let's say, you're doing some financial modeling. You have VAR. It's not 100%, right?
Yeah.
While you're at risk, there is still capable, you have unexpected loss model, right? In the credit space. You're not 100% know exactly.
More complexity.
Yes, so I think in terms of that, it's different use cases, right? So for example, for LLM GenAI, looking at the unstructured data, semi-structured, structure, maybe the best, one of the use cases that you use, right? Working with a lot of documentation, documents, right? You may not use that, let's say, for financial decisions, right? You may not use that to generate the reports that goes to your client because there is a possibility who is responsible for that, right? So it all depends on the different use cases that you at your enterprise or organization are trying to use this for, right? It's not solution for each and every problem.